Live like a hobbit. What do I mean by that? Well, let me explain. You see, as I've said before in one of my previous videos, I believe that there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world right now in terms of war, politics, economically speaking, along those lines. And I feel like us as human beings in general, especially in this day and age of technology and social media and how quickly we can receive news and see news and hear about news with a click of a button on our phone or by turning on the TV and going on the news channel, right? Access to information in general is within a click of your fingers, right? And I believe what that has created is added external stress on our lives, when the fact of the matter is we have to think about everything else that we're dealing with in our own individual lives around us. Paying for bills, worrying about our family members, worrying about our friends, looking after our own health, dealing with our own personal problems, dealing with our own stresses and anxieties and whatever other problems that may be existing in your life at the moment. And especially if you have a family of your own, especially if you're, a new family, you're new to parenting, and you've got young kids to raise and stuff, and that's even more added responsibility on top of yourself, right? So then, in our own individual ways, we have all of these things to worry about in our own little worlds, and then we have to worry about everything else outside of our little worlds, outside of our own little bubbles. And I'm not saying bubble in a way of like, we're wrapped up in bubble wrap or cotton wool or something like that. I'm not trying to say that at all. However, these are problems that we have to deal with in our own lives without the added stress of everything else outside of that. But unfortunately, for most people in the world, I would say that is a reality, is that we're also taking on the stress and woes of things completely outside of our control, but yet affect us mentally when we allow it to affect us and when we absorb all of this information, right? And it's not just on the news channels, it's through Instagram, it's through Twitter or X as it's called now, it's through TikTok, right? We consume all of this information, we take it in, and these social media companies, these news corporations, they take our attention and we feed it with fear or anger or despair or hopelessness and stuff like that, right? So what do I mean when I say live like a hobbit? Well, if you know anything about Lord of the Rings, I know quite a lot, but if you know about Lord of the Rings and you know the habits of a hobbit, you will know that they keep to themselves. They just stick to their close little communities. They don't bother too much with what goes on in a completely different country or in a completely different land. They're very satisfied with keeping with their own little space that they have, their own little community, just dealing with the problems that are in front of them that they can manage. And if you think about it even more, we go back a couple hundred years and back to the 1800s when, electricity was not even around by that point, I don't think. I'm not too familiar with the history of electricity, but I'm pretty sure at some point in the 1800s we didn't have it yet, which means we didn't have social media, which means we didn't have instant access to information through the internet and so forth that we have now. if you think of it this way, there would have been war and chaos and problems which would have been happening in Asia during those times, in Africa, in South America, through Europe, you name it, it would have been happening. But the difference being is, through blissful ignorance, if you want to call it, we didn't know. We didn't know. And it didn't affect us. The only thing that affected us is that at the time, during that time, I would assume, is whether we can put food on the table for ourselves, but also our family members too. And this is not me saying to not think about other things going on outside of your life, things that would be of importance, okay? Whether it's your own government making decisions that you might not seem appropriate or wrong, okay? You know, situations such as the conflict between Israel and Palestine, the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, the conflict going on between Israel, the USA, and Iran, and Lebanon. Okay? I'm not saying that you should not think about these things and not have an opinion on these things or anything like that. I'm just coming at the angle of how these external factors, and not just in terms of war and politics, but just in terms of finance, in terms of health and social care, in terms of workers' rights, right? All of which are very valid, and a lot of things going on right now can affect us indirectly in some way, whatever the case may be. However, my point is, before we can worry about what's going on outside of our peripheral vision, we need to think about what is happening in front of us right now, what our concerns are as individuals and with our own families, with our own close communities, what is happening in those circles, with those people who are dear to us and who we love and who are within our close social circle. I think that's the most important thing. I think personally, the priorities are look after your loved ones, your family, look after your husband or wife, look after your children, look after your grandparents, your parents, make sure they're okay, make sure your finances are in order, make sure your health is in order, make sure that your career or whatever path in life you're taking is going in the right direction before you start to think about everything else going on outside of your zone. We all have things to worry about in ourselves, and I don't mean worry like in terms of anxiety and that. I tend not to worry too much about what's going on in my life right now. There's things that I am addressing, but I'm not letting it worry me or get to me or anything like that. It's just carry on. I just go day by day, and whatever happens, happens, right? But there are things in our lives which we have to address in ourselves, which should take priority over things that are out of our control right now. And it's an indirect quote. It's not necessarily the exact quote from Jordan Peterson, but it's along the lines of, before you help the world, help yourself first. Because you're going to be good to no one else outside of your family and friends. You don't have your own life in order first, if you don't have these priorities in line first. That's just my opinion. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, awesome. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and like and share this video. If you disagree with me on some points, or you might have some questions, feel free to leave a comment below on my YouTube video. If you want to message me directly, come over to my Instagram page, StirringTeaInACrazyWorld. I'm more than happy to have a nice chat there too. Anyways, that's enough from me. I'll see you in the next video. Latest.